we encountered that idea in the field, and we were told by several doctors that they weren't interested in remote second opinions because the doctor's role is to physically examine the patient, and without that they can't form any opinion. Obviously that's changed, and perhaps the pandemic has changed that a little bit. But panelists, any comments generally back on that one? We don't have to dig too deeply in that because obviously we're doing this, all three of you are doing this, but any comments back on that? Maybe it's an obstacle that we have in what used to be the practice of medicine and what we're doing today in telemedicine. Nikki, why don't you start off? I know, sorry, you just did your millionth telemedicine visit I saw the other day online.
Yes, we did. So I think, again, probably if you take it in the lens of telehealth, right, we've probably overcome some of those barriers now. I think everyone realizes, whether it be a written remote second opinion or doing it over video, that it absolutely can be done. And clinically, there is a place for all of that. Yes, every type of clinical situation cannot be handled in the same manner every way, but there's absolutely an avenue for all of that. And I think it's just explaining that to your physicians, and you will have those, as we've said on this panel before, those who will engage with you and want to do this, and those who do not. And you just engage with those physicians who believe in it and want to do that work with you.
Great. Dr. Rasmussen, you had a comment on that as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off here, let's remember these are second opinions, right? So that means the patient has a diagnosis already. And as I'm sure Nikki and Cole can attest, you really don't want to run a program like this and accept a request from a patient for a symptom. As an example, abdominal pain is not a diagnosis, and invariably you're not going to make that patient happy because this is not a good modality to evaluate abdominal pain. But if you've got something like aortic stenosis and the question is, do I need my valve replaced and what is the best way to do it? I mean, this is the ideal thing for a program like this, when that evaluation really depends upon a review of a cardiologist's notes and their documentation of the patient's symptoms and trajectory of their symptoms. And, quite honestly, it all boils down to the imaging anyway. This kind of program is highly effective for those kinds of questions. I'll just give you a little anecdote here around telemedicine in general. One of the most senior physicians at Cleveland Clinic just retired recently. He is a pulmonologist, world renowned. Like, the guy basically invented modern critical care and how to ventilate patients in the ICU. And I remember when I first started talking to him about telemedicine 5-6 years ago, he expressed some concerns about, how do you listen to the lungs and things like this with telemedicine. And by the time he got around to retirement, I remember him sitting in a meeting with me and he said, well, let's just be honest here, Peter, no one's listening to the lungs anymore anyway. And, that's just the reality. The physical exam, for the most part, is becoming kind of quaint and a little bit archaic in many ways because modern medicine's practiced with data. It's going to be laboratory data, it's going to be imaging data, and that's what you really need to have in order to do the right thing with the patient. And fortunately, all that data now is digital and readily transportable through the EHR systems.